Welcome to Making a Murder Rubberducky YouTube channel. And I want to thank you for joining me again for our daily series, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. And that is Central Time USA. We're doing the daily MaM Reading CASO Investigative Reports, pages 71 through 80 pages, part 8. And with that, let's get started. So we're going to back up a little bit because we're in the middle of a statement from Nicole Sturm to page 70, and we're going to slide down here, and we'll start at the 11:05 or 11:50 a.m. At 11:50 a.m., I did obtain the following written statement from Nicole Sturm. At approximately 10 a.m. on November 5th, 2005, we, Pam Sturm and myself, asked Earl Avery permission to look around the property. He granted us permission, and we, Pam and myself, began on foot. Walking south of the main office, we, Pam and myself, separated and began looking into salvaged vehicles. At approximately 10:20 a.m., Pam called me over to look at the blue-green Toyota RAV4 that was covered in brush and other salvaged. Page 71. Vehicle parts. Pam immediately called dispatch to help identify the vehicle. I took pictures with a digital camera before the phone call. While Pam was on the phone with dispatch, I tried all the vehicle doors, using a tissue to avoid contact, which were locked. Dispatch indicated to check the driver's front windshield panel for the VIN. I was only able to verify a few of the VIN digits. Dispatch took our phone number, and we moved away from the vehicle. 3 Spanish-speaking individuals were in the vicinity, approximately 100 yards from the Toyota. We awaited arrival of Manitowoc PD and remained about 1,000 feet from the vehicle, but keeping in constant visual contact. This statement was signed by Nicole E. Sturm in my presence at 12 o'clock noon on 11:05:05. I also obtained the following written statement from Pamela Sturm. Today's date is November 5, 2005. At approximately 10 o'clock a.m., I, Pamela Sturm, and my daughter, Nicole Sturm, obtained permission from Earl Avery, co-owner of Avery Salvage, to search the salvage yard for Teresa Hallbach's missing RAV4 Toyota vehicle. We searched several vehicles inside and out. I found a RAV4 Toyota in the back quarry at 10:20 a.m. The vehicle was covered with an old hood, plywood, and several large branches. I called over my daughter Nicole to read the VIN number. She took some digital pictures quickly in case we were told to leave. No license plates were on the vehicle. I called Sheriff Pogle's number to report vehicle. We read VIN number to Pogle. He told us to stay away from the vehicle and wait for police to arrive. 3 men dressed in old clothing walked around while we were searching. They all talked Spanish. Inside the vehicle were plastic soda bottles. This statement was signed by Pamela Sturm in my presence at 12 o'clock noon on 11:05:05. After the completion of the statements, I did give the Sturms a ride back to their vehicle, which was parked in the parking area of Avery's Auto Salvage. The camera used by the Sturms to capture digital images of the RAV4 was turned over to Sheriff Pogle by me. Investigation continues. John Dietering, Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Page 72. Type of activity, receipt, and execution of search warrant. Date of activity, 11:05:05. Reporting officer, Investigator Mark Wiegert. At approximately 11:45 hours, I, Wiegert, was advised by Sheriff Pogle the scene would be turned over to our department under the Mutual Aid Pact for Manitowoc County. At approximately 13:04 hours, I met with Calumet County District Attorney Kenneth R. Kratz and Manitowoc County District Attorney Mark Rohr, as well as Manitowoc County Assistant District Attorney Grissenbach. At that time, we decided we would need to apply for a search warrant for the property. At approximately 14:04 hours, Detective Rummaker and District Attorneys Rohr, Kratz, and Grissenbach responded the Honorable Judge Jerome Fox's residence in the city of Two Rivers. At that time, District Attorney Kratz was assigned as special prosecutor of the case. We then left the Honorable Judge Fox's residence and went to the Fox Law Office on Washington Street in Two Rivers, arriving there at approximately 14:15 hours. At 15:10 hours, we did receive the search warrant, and the search warrant was signed by the Honorable Judge Fox. We left the Honorable Judge Fox's office at 15:14 hours and returned to the Avery property. We arrived at the Avery property at approximately 15:25 hours, at which time we began to execute the search warrant. A copy of said search warrant will be included with this report. Investigation continues. Investigator Mark Wiegert, Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Page 73. Type of activity: telephone conversation with Detective Sievert, Marinette County Sheriff's Department. Date of activity: 11:05:05. Reporting officer: Investigator John Dietering. Documents generated: none. On Saturday, 11:05:05, at 12:15 hours, I, Dietering, did make contact with Detective Sievert of the Marinette County Sheriff's Department. I had been instructed to advise the Marinette Sheriff's Department to prevent anyone from entering or leaving the properties owned by Alan Avery. Sievert indicated that he had squads on the way to take care of this matter. At 13:45 hours, I had further contact with Marinette Sheriff's Department Detective Sievert. I was instructed to advise Sievert to interview everyone at the scene and, if possible, obtain consent to search the residence. Investigation continues. John Dietering, Investigator, Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Page 74. Type of activity: interview of Earl K. Avery. Date of activity: 11:05:05 at 12:40 hours. Reporting officer: Investigator Mark Wiegert. On 11:05:05 at approximately 12:40 hours, I, Investigator Wiegert of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department, met with Earl Avery in Investigator Dietering's unmarked, unlocked squad car. I informed Earl he was not under arrest at this time and could stop answering questions if he wished to do so. Earl agreed to speak with me at that time. I asked Earl who owns the salvage yard, to which Earl stated his mom, Dolores, actually would own the property and took it over from his grandparents. Earl states he works there every weekday from 8 a.m. to 5:00 p.m. and then every other Saturday. Earl said it was pretty much a normal week except for Thursday, 11:03:05. He and his brother Steven Avery went to an automobile insurance auction on what he believes was CASO Drive by U.S. Highway 41 in the city of Appleton. According to Earl, Steven picked him up at his house at approximately 6:30 a.m. on Thursday, 11:03:05. He states they got back at around 3:00 p.m. I asked Earl if they had stopped anywhere else on that day, to which Earl stated they stopped at a couple of places on the way home. One of the places was a Firestone tire business, which he described as being around U.S. Highway 41 in the city of De Pere. He also stated that they stopped at Smitty's Salvage and Supply Yard after leaving the Firestone place, which is also located in the Green Bay area. Earl also told me after leaving Smitty's, they went to a place called Harbor Freight and bought some tools, which is just down from Smitty's Salvage and Supply. After leaving Harbor Freight, they stopped in a village of Denmark at a restaurant, which is just off of I-43. Earl told me they left the restaurant at approximately 2:30 p.m. When they arrived in the Michigan area, Steven dropped Earl off at home. Earl then changed into his work pants and then came back to work. He states he got back to work at approximately 3:15 p.m. until approximately 5:00 p.m. At that time, I asked Earl to go back to the beginning of the week so he could tell me what he had done. Earl stated that on Monday, 10/31/05, he was doing cars. I asked him what he meant by that, to which Earl states they would cut the motors and transmissions out of the cars. Earl then stated either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. He was not sure of the day. He and a friend of his by the name of Robert Fabian had taken his mother's golf cart and took a ride. He stated they went down a lane at about 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon. He states the lane is where we would have found Teresa's vehicle. He states when they drove down the lane with the Page 75. Golf cart in the truck was not there. I asked him again if he could be more clear on what day this occurred. Earl stated it may have been Tuesday, but he does not know for sure. On Tuesday, Earl states he again was working on cars, removing the motors and transmissions. but would not have been anywhere near where the truck would have been parked. I asked Earl when the last time he would have been anywhere near the where's Teresa's vehicle was located, to which Earl stated it was last night, which would have been 11:04:05. He and Stephen were down near the pond, which is directly north of where the vehicle would have been found, shooting and sighting in their rifle. He stated they were down there right before dark, and he did not notice the vehicle at all, but never really looked up there. I asked Earl if anybody would have walked up there to where we had found Teresa's vehicle, to which Earl stated nobody had, including him or Stephen. Earl states the first time he had heard about this, his mom had called him when he was at home and said the TV stations were here to talk with Stephen about the missing woman. His mom also told Earl that Stephen had made the comment that he thought he was being treated like a suspect. Earl also stated the rest of the week pretty much seemed normal, and this morning, which would have been 11:05:05, Stephen and his mom left to go up north, where they have cabins up in Marinette County. Stephen would have taken his Blue Grand Dam up north. According to Earl, Stephen would be at his dad's cabin. I asked him where that was. He stated it was the last cabin on Highline Drive, or road, outside of Crivets in Marinette County. He told me that they have 3 cabins there. At that time, I asked Earl if he knew what would have happened to Teresa. Earl states he had no idea what would have happened, nor does he know how Teresa's vehicle would have gotten there. Earl told me, even if my brother did something, I would tell. I asked Earl if he is familiar with Auto Trader magazine. Earl states he is because his brother Stephen sold approximately 4 to 6 vehicles through the Auto Trader magazine. Earl did remember that on Monday, 10/31/05, Stephen had made a comment to Earl that he had to go home because somebody was meeting him there. He believed it was somebody from Auto Trader magazine who was supposed to meet Stephen. Earl also stated he remembers last week that someone had called and asked for Stephen, and his brother Charles had talked to her. I asked him if he knew who that was. Earl stated he was not sure, but he thinks it was someone from the Auto Trader magazine again. That was the end of my conversation with Earl. Investigation continues. Page 76, Investigator Mark Wiegert, Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Page 77, Type of Activity Supplemental Report. Date of Activity 11:05:05. Reporting Officer Sergeant Bill Tyson. On Saturday, 11:05:05, at approximately 12:20 hours, I, Sergeant Bill Tyson of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department, did receive a telephone call at my residence from Calumet County Dispatch. Calumet County Dispatch informed me my assistance was needed at the Steven Avery property, and Teresa Halbach's vehicle was located in a junkyard on the Avery property. Upon my arrival at the Sheriff's Department, I did wait for Deputy Jennifer J. Bass to arrive. Upon Deputy Bass's arrival, we proceeded to go to the Avery property to assist in the investigation. Upon our arrival at approximately 14:45 hours, I did make contact with Investigator Wiegert and Investigator Steyer. Investigator Steyer informed me I should go into the junkyard to relieve a Manitowoc County deputy who was standing by a Teresa Halbach's vehicle. Deputy Bass and I proceeded into the junkyard and were met by several law enforcement officers who were keeping a crime scene log. I did check in with the officer who was keeping the log, and he did log me into the area at approximately 14:55 hours. I was notified that I should walk in the left tire lane to proceed toward Teresa Halbach's vehicle. Upon approaching Teresa Halbach's vehicle, the Manitowoc County deputy exited the area. While standing guard over the green Toyota RAV4, I could see the sky was getting very dark and there was a mist in the air. There was talk amongst several of the officers to put a tarp over the green Toyota RAV4 to protect any possible evidence on the exterior of the vehicle. A tarp was produced, and I did assist in getting objects from in back of other vehicles to help weigh down the tarp to prevent it from blowing away. Extreme care was used by the officers to prevent the tarp from touching the green Toyota RAV4. Once the tarp was in place, Investigator Steyer notified me that my assistance was needed back at the command post. Deputy Bass did relieve me in protecting the green Toyota RAV4. I exited the crime scene area of the green Toyota RAV 4. At approximately 15:10 hours. Upon arriving with Investigator Steyer back at the command center, I was informed it would be my responsibility to log the times of the search teams that were going to be entering the residences. Once the warrants were obtained, the search teams did execute the entry into the residence and did report back to me with the times they entered and exited each of the residence and outbuilding buildings. Those times were given to the appropriate officers. Page 78. At approximately 1700 hours, I did make contact with representatives of the Great Lakes Search and Rescue Association. I was informed there were 4 dogs that would be assisting with the search of the junkyard. Those handling dogs were Elaine McClure, Grace Salm, Leanne Charnock, and Robert Kramer. I was informed that there should be a deputy with each of the dog handlers, and I did assign Deputy Kenneth R. Matuzik to go with Grace Salm, Deputy Daniel Kartarski to go with Elaine McClure, and Deputy Gary Schultz to go with Robert Kramer. At 17:20 hours, the dogs and deputies began their search of the junkyard area. At approximately 18:55 hours, Investigator Baldwin informed me that the dogs and deputies had finished the search of the junkyard area, and the dogs and their dog handlers were released from the crime scene. Sergeant Bill Tyson, Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Page 79. Type of activity: interview of Joshua R. Radandt, male, white, date of birth 11/10/74. Date of activity 11:05:05. Reporting officer Investigator Gary Stryer. On Monday 11:05:05 at approximately 1:30 p.m. Joshua R. Radandt signed a Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department consent to search form for his gravelstone quarry located at 12415 County Highway Q, 2 Rivers, Wisconsin 542545. The copy was witnessed by Sergeant Knack, number 412 of the Manitowoc County Police Department C Exhibit Section. At approximately 5 o'clock p.m., Investigator Steyer of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department had spoken with Joshua R. Radandt at a deer camp off of Cuss Road on the edge of the Radandt gravel pit. Radandt stated on Monday 10/31/05 at approximately 4:30 p.m. he drove up to his deer camp off of Cuss Road through his gravel pit and observed a fire in the proximity of Steven Avery's residence, or on the Avery property. Joshua Radandt completed a written statement form C Exhibit Section. Radandt informed Investigator Steyer on Monday shortly after 4:30 p.m. Radandt was driving to his deer camp through his quarry where he observed a large fire on the Steven Avery property located by the Red House. Radandt indicated he remembers it being right after 4:30 because he had an employee that had just come to work to take another employee's shift at 4:30 p.m. Radandt indicated it was partly cloudy or partly sunny day, and he had a clear visibility from his location while he was driving to his deer camp. Radandt indicated he did not observe any people standing next to the fire or any vehicles located on the Avery property. Gary Stryer, Investigator, Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Page 80. Type of activity: consent search of the Earl Avery property. Date of activity 11:05:05. Reporting officer Investigator John Dietering. Documents generated: consent to search form. On Saturday 11:05:05 at 14:05 hours, Manitowoc County Detective Dennis Jacobs and I, Dietering, did escort Earl Avery, previously mentioned in this report, to his residence. Earl Avery had questioned me earlier as to whether he would be allowed to leave the area of the junkyard. After some period of time passed, it was determined that Earl Avery could leave the junkyard area. Earl Avery did allow me to review the outgoing calls made by him on his cellular phone, and the only call that he had made was to a number he identified as Steven Avery's cellular phone number at approximately 7 o'clock a.m. on the morning of Saturday 11:05:05. I inquired of Earl Avery if he would allow Detective Jacobs and I to perform a cursory search of his residence. He advised me that was perfectly acceptable with him. Detective Jacobs and I did follow Earl Avery to his residence located at 6904 State Highway Y, Whitelaw, Wisconsin 54247. We did perform a very rudimentary search of Earl Avery's residence and outbuildings and did take a walk around the property line. Nothing of evidentiary nature was located. I questioned Earl Avery as to remarks he made to Investigator Wiegert about Stephen and Earl sighting in some firearms in the pit that previous evening. He stated when he arrived in the area where they were target practicing, immediately north of where Miss Halbach's vehicle was located, he stated that it was starting to get dark and stated he did not notice the vehicle, but he was not really looking for it either. Earl Avery stated that he fired 22 rounds of ammunition while at the pit. He stated that this was a box and 2 rounds. He was asked how many rounds Stephen had fired, and his response was none. Detective Jacobs and I left the Earl Avery residence at 14:26 hours. John Dietering, investigator, Calumet County Sheriff's Department. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and do a little reviewing. Take some notes. On page 71, I wanted to kind of go over, I thought it was interesting how Pamela Sturm had went on and on about it's more bluish than green color of the vehicle that she found, but yet when she makes her written statement, she completely leaves out the color. She simply writes, I found a RAV4 Toyota in the back quarry at 10:20 a.m. Where's the color? I mean, she was all about the color then. Also, inside the vehicle were plastic soda bottles. Now, in the pictures, I see a water bottle and I see a soda can, but we don't see plastic soda bottles that I know of. I could be wrong, but I don't recall seeing that, so I thought that was interesting. And then, of course, we're back to Scott Blodorn, the roommate of the victim, as well as the ex-boyfriend Ryan Hilligus, are in charge, believe it or not, of the search party. So the search parties have been given their maps and sent on their way to cover different territories. And an hour later, Mrs. Sturm and her daughter show up. But Ryan Hilligus and Scott Blodorn have somehow miraculously known that they need to hold on to the camera. They need to make sure and give these 2 individual ladies the direct line to Sheriff Pogel, and they give them a map. And here you see that the camera used by the Sturms to capture digital images of the RAV4 was turned over to Sheriff Pogel by Dietering. So we'll jump down to page 72, and it's the receipt and execution of search warrant. And I thought it was interesting. They mention here a mutual aid pact from Manitowoc County. So that's between Calumet County and Manitowoc County. And let's understand what that means. We don't want to blow by that because it's very key here. Manitowoc County has everybody being depositioned in a lawsuit, a civil lawsuit that Steven Avery, who is soon to be a suspect in this case, already stating that he's being questioned like a suspect. And they have a lawsuit between him. And so they've already ventured into the conflict of interest by having Manitowoc County present, because it's in their best interest to find this person guilty, obviously. And so that prevents anybody from being non-biased in, a normal frame of law. So they should have technically recused themselves. So we go on here, and you can see that Mark Wiegert's talking about how he met with Kenneth Kratz and Mark Rohrer and Grisbach. Now keep in mind, Grisbach is the same assistant district attorney that is now the same Grissenbach that is helping Mr. Andrew Colburn with his civil suit in 2019. Now look at Mark Rohrer. He just got done being depositioned. And guess what? Kenneth Kratz gets his special assignment as special prosecutor right today on the 5th. So very interesting. And who appoints him? Honorable Judge Jerome Fox of Two Rivers. So we'll scroll down. There wasn't much on 73 that caught my eye, but on 74, I think we have a little interesting notes here. Actually, I should have highlighted this. Remember, Andrew Colburn lives in Whitelaw, and so does Earl Avery. And there has been talk that they actually have done business together at the Avery Salvage Yard, as well as Andrew Colburn is supposedly friends with Earl Avery. So just a mental note there on the whiteboard. Also, let's go over this. Earl then stated either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, he was not sure of the day, he and his friend of his by the name of Robert Fabian. Let's stop right there. Robert Fabian is not just a friend, okay? Earl's wife, her sister's brother, so it's Earl's brother-in-law, his wife's brother-in-law, Robert Fabian. It's a relative, not just a random friend that stops over. Robert Fabian is family. And they take the mother's golf cart, Dolores's golf cart, and they took a ride. And they went down a lane at about 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon. And they they would have found Teresa's vehicle if it had been there. He doesn't remember which day, though. He doesn't know if it was Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Well, Monday was the 31st, Tuesday was the 1st, and Wednesday was the 2nd. But he can't remember which day. He states when they drove down the lane with the golf cart, the truck was not there. He couldn't remember the day, but he thought it might have been Tuesday. He wasn't sure. The very next statement is on Tuesday. Earl states he again was working on cars, removing motors and transmissions, but he would not have been anywhere near the truck. Would have been parked. What? He just contradicted himself. Well, did he just realize that he put himself right where that vehicle was? That at this point he's saying that he was at work? That he was on site? And that he knows that Steven is expecting a girl from Auto Trader? Interesting. Should have made him a prime suspect. According to Earl, Steven would be at his dad's cabin. I asked him where that was. He stated it was the last cabin on Highline Road, outside of Cribbets in Marinette County. He told me they have 3 cabins there. Now, I had never really picked that up before, that there were 3 cabins there, and I find that interesting. He also stated, Earl told me, even if my brother did something, I would tell. Think about what he says. Even if my brother did something, I would tell. So if his brother didn't do something, he would tell too? I don't know. It's a weird statement. Even if my brother did something, I would tell. I get it, kind of, but I know I'm probably picking little stuff. It's just the wording's strange. But what's not strange is that in order for your individuals to be treated as suspects, they would need to fit the Denny law. And the Denny is that they need to have accessibility to the victim. They need to be available to actually have caused the crime. And they have to have the knowledge of this person. So there has to be some pre-relationship in a sense that they're aware of this person. And here's where Earl clears that up. Earl did remember that on Monday, 10/31/05, Steven had made the comment to Earl that he had to go home because somebody was meeting him there. He believed it was somebody from Auto Trader magazine who was supposed to meet Steven. Earl also remembers last week that somebody had called and asked for Steven, and his brother Charles had talked to her. I asked him if he knew who that was. Earl stated he was not sure, but he thinks it was someone from the Auto Trader magazine again. So they're quite aware that the Auto Trader magazine is coming. That covers all of it. And if you want to get into motive, there's plenty of motive if you look at the situation where somebody's been gone for 18 years. You have been pulling the weight. You have been struggling, trying to make the ends meet. And now this person just comes home. They're going to be receiving a great deal of money. Not $36 million. I'm sure it would have settled out like $4 million, something like that. But enough to buy the salvage yard and swipe it out right from under you and your family. You follow me? Now, in this case, we all have had moments where we're like, would there be a true motive? Well, you can read some of the newspaper clippings in the library, and you can follow along with that. And I'm going to bring some points up of interest. There was a discord between the brothers. So Earl and Chuck were having a hard time with Steven, and there was arguments on how that business should be run at the salvage yard between the 3 of them. And this is stated in some of the newspaper interviews by Steven. And he even quoted Chucky's saying, if you can make it in there, you got to be able to make it out here. And Steven said, that really hurt. And he had removed himself from family, and he had put himself in a little tiny ice shack because he felt better away from everyone. That tells you a little bit that this wasn't flying colors here, that everybody loved that Steven was home. And later, you get interviews with Barb, and you get interviews with Scott Tadich, and their, claim, they alleged that Steven was trying to be very controlling, that was his nature, and that they weren't having it. So there's a lot of reason why motive could have been there. So let's go ahead and jump to page 77. There's a lot to cover in these 10 pages, so bear with me here. I don't want to miss something. There's no reason to hurry through it. We want to do it proper. So we have Investigator Steyer informed me, so let's see, who are we talking about? Bill Tyson, okay? That I should go into the junkyard to relieve a Manitowoc County deputy who was standing by a Teresa Halbach vehicle. Stop right there. Oh my God. Okay. We know that Calumet County immediately hurried when they got the call from Pam. They were the first to know about it. So if we're looking at 14:45 hours, we're talking 2:45 p.m. when finally somebody from Calumet County is first getting to the RAV. So are you telling me that the Manitowoc County deputy has been allowed to guard that RAV without any Calumet County involved? So let's do the time here. The RAV was found. We'll go 10:20, okay? We'll just round it off. Go 10:30 even a.m. So we've got 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30. So let's back up. 2:30. 4 hours that Manitowoc County has been guarding that RAV without Calumet County. All right, so at this point, he states, he goes on to say, I did check in with the officer who was keeping the log, and he did log me in at that area at approximately 4:55 hours. Okay, so we know what time that we're talking, 2:55. He gets logged in, and it was interesting that he was told to walk in the left tire lane. But what caught my eye, you guys, is how many times in one paragraph, Bill Tyson made sure to say the word green Toyota RAV4. So I've numbered it for you guys. While standing guard over a green Toyota RAV4, and then to put a tarp over the green Toyota RAV4. And then number 3, to prevent the tarp from touching the green Toyota RAV4. And then 4, protecting the green Toyota RAV4. And then 5, green Toyota RAV4. Really? Why is he so insistent on talking about the green Toyota RAV4? Now, Pam just got going over and over and over it, saying it was a bluish green. One of them isn't being honest. Okay, and in page 78, here's where we're back at the Great Lakes Search and Rescue Association with the dogs. Again, here's the second confirmation that nothing was noted at the crime scene on the 5th. So how did the dogs hit on the RAV? When we have Investigator Baldwin informed me that the dogs and deputies had finished the search of the junkyard area, and the dogs and their dog handlers were released from the crime scene. Nothing reported. So when we go into this later and we read other reports that the dogs hit on the RAV, when? Because according to the CASO, or the CASO, tomatoes, potatoes, when did the dogs hit on this RAV? I have yet to see it in the CASO. And then we'll continue on to page 79, and we're now in the interview of Joshua R. Radandt. Another big deal. Okay, in his statement here, he states, where is he on Monday? Where's Josh Radandt? Monday, shortly after 4:30 p.m., Radandt was driving to his deer camp through his quarry. Where'd we find the pelvic bones? The quarry. Who's with Josh? Doesn't appear like anybody. Where he observes a large fire on the Steve Avery property located by the red house. What house? Is he referring to the little trailer? Perhaps. He indicates he remembers it being right after 4:30 because he had an employee that had just come to work after another employee's shift at 4:30. So the gravel pit's rolling at this time, and it appears that Radandt works down there. So are you telling me that Joshua Radandt, runs the end loader that the dogs hit on? And the dogs hit on 8 feet up on gravel pile. Now, I know we haven't got to that part, but that just comes from my own reading of the other documents, but we'll get to it. But yeah, why is he not a suspect from the get-go? He absolutely places himself down in that quarry where the pelvic bone is found. All right, guys. And then we'll come down here. I just wanted to make a little note on our board here. Yes, Earl did allow them to do a rudimentary search of his residence and outbuildings, and nothing evidentiary in nature was located. And he did state this. I thought this was interesting. He was asked how many rounds Steven had fired, and his response was none. So Steven had also said he did not fire the gun, and now we have a second witness, which is Earl Avery, also stating that. So thank you so much, and with that, we are done with our review. Thank you guys so much for joining the Daily MaM Reading and the CASO Investigative Reports. And we did complete Part 8. So tomorrow I hope you join us for Part 9. And thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you would like updates. And it's time, you guys. If you didn't do the crime, you shouldn't do the time. Thank you guys and have a wonderful evening.